Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting on digitalization and development policy. Digitalization seems to be a quite new area for development cooperation, but the potential is really huge. And we see that digitalization, unlike other historic transformations brought about by innovation, is not following linear path, but an exponential one. Just remember, in Africa, we have already more than 700 million people using mobile phones. That's more than about 500 million in Europe. That means this market in Africa is already much bigger than that in Europe. And worldwide, more people have mobile phones than access to a toilet. And that means information and communication technology is a catalyzer for development. A good example is the mobile payment in Kenya, which is more widely used than in Germany and many other industrialized countries. And this shows that there is an urgent need for many people to use this new world which is opened by ICT. And sometimes the impression it's a much more reluctant approach in industrialized countries to innovation in the ICT sector, because it's clear everybody of us in industrialized countries has his or her bank account. You are not urged to use mobile payment. But in many African and developing countries, this is the only way to get access to finance. And so we see that information and communication technology is inclusive, is participatory, and is enabling people to organize themselves and also to actively take part in social life. And the other way around, development countries are motors for innovation in the ICT sector. It's a fact that mobile phones, tablets are sold in industrialized countries for hundreds of euros. That's easy. It's much more challenging to provide people in developing countries with mobile phones, with internet access for, let's say, $3 a month. This is a great challenge, and therefore the technological potential for the ICT sector is in developing countries much more than in industrialized countries. And of course, it's a political challenge too, to bridge the digital divide in our societies, also in developing countries. So what do we need in order to empower people through information and communication technology? This meeting is about e-participation. And of course, we first need technology, end-user devices that everybody can afford. Second, we need knowledge on how to use this technology in order to overcome illiteracy and to make people literate and illiterate. Third, we need knowledge about options for influencing political decision-making. Fourth, the willingness of political decision makers to really give citizens a say. And fifth, to make information freely available. Sixth, we need the willingness of users to make their voices heard. And seventh, we need action. The votes in e-participation must have a visible effect. These 7 points are exactly what we try to support through our development cooperation. E-participation and agenda setting may, however, not remain the prerogative of the lucky few rich. The divide between digital natives and non-digital natives widens. Participation is limited to those who have end-user devices, who have the right knowledge and the right level of digital literacy. So ICT, information and communication technology, is crucial to bridge this digital divide. And we have to realize that, on the other hand, ICT is also being misused, for example, to monitor and silence the opposition. And this is a vicious digital circle in which ICT and e-participation act as gatekeepers, preventing participation and fostering undemocratic structures. So what we need to, in order to prevent this scenario, is that people in poorer and rural areas too need access to the internet. Second, we must not allow government responsibilities to be outsourced to large multinational monopolists. Third, we need an international bill of digital rights. This must be created in order to guarantee fundamental rights such as data privacy. And fourth, partners' knowledge needs to be enhanced so that ICT can be used and digital literacy can be improved. And last but not least, more information needs to be made available freely, and citizens need to be treated as mature people who can have their say. Under Germany's development cooperation programs, there are more than 160 projects with ICT components that are already underway across all continents, and 44 of them have dedicated components related to good governance. Based on an international comparison of donors, Germany is a leader when it comes to fostering ICT development in our partner countries. And we want to further step up our activities. We want to provide more funding for ICT in developing projects. We want to increase the number of countries where we have ICT components, and internationally we want to advocate for digital human rights. That's why we are currently drafting a digital agenda at my Ministry for Economic Cooperation Development. The headline will be ICT for Development, and it will ensure, with regard to e-participation, that such issues are taken on board. And with respect to our agenda, we attach, of course, very great importance to critical input from the community. So let me invite you to contribute to this digital agenda with regard to development worldwide. In international bodies and multilateral organizations, we are pushing for support for cyber capacity building, that is, more ICT knowledge in our partner countries. And digitalization has changed our development cooperation. That's why at our 2015 Day on Africa, which will be next week already, we will follow up on the Republica today. The topic for this Day on Africa will be bridging the digital divide. And among other things, we want to have a debate on how participation can be improved through more and better internet access. So you see, there is the clear political will to shape our strategy on better use of ICT for development. And you all know that the internet is neither good nor bad. It's up to us to use it for a good development in the developing and the industrialized world. I'm very pleased that we will now have a panel on e-participation. Let me introduce Claude Migisha Kalisa from K-Lab, Stefan Wehrmeyer from the Open Knowledge Foundation, and Thomas Wagenknecht from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. We are keen to learn from you on your experience on e-participation, on your projects, And I may invite you now to come to the stage. The floor is yours. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your ideas and the discussion on ICT. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi everybody. I am Katrin and I have the pleasure to actually moderate the panel now. Thank you very much, Mr. Silberhorn, for this great introduction. And what we just learned is that not only Germany has over about 160 projects with ICT components, but also, which makes me very happy, a strong commitment for e-participation and actually to support the ICT 4D sector even more. I'd like to take the chance today, and I think we all would like to take advantage of the opportunity, because this is actually what we can do right now, is to formulate recommendations for the policymakers. So I'm very happy to have my guests here today. This is Thomas Wagenknecht from the Karlsruhe Institute for Technology. You're working on e-participation and crowdfunding. Then we have Stefan Wehrmeyer, who's not only a data journalist working for Correctiv, but also head of Ask the State, which is an open information project of the Open Knowledge Foundation Germany. And last but not least, I'm actually very happy to introduce Daniela Silva, who jumped in for Claude Kalisa, who had to cancel last minute. And Daniela is also combating the lack of civic participation before in Brazil, but now you're based in New York because now you are working for the Open Society Foundation. Well, a warm welcome for my panelists, please. Let me just quickly go back to e-participation for a sec. What does it actually mean? It means participation, it means getting active, taking part in decision-making processes that actually have real impact and outcome. Citizens can take part in public decision-making processes at different levels. That means on a local level, on a regional level, on a national level, and idealistically also on an international level. E-participation also means electronic participation through ICT. That is interactive online design of politics and policies. There are actually two different forms that I like to differentiate. One is the direct form. That means online participation. That means that users will and their request is structurally connected to political decision-making. And the other form is a bit more indirect. That means that users can influence agenda setting and shining a light on their issues and problems. Also, when we talk about e-participation, we have to have in mind that we're talking about dialect and the access to free information. And I'm hoping that especially Stefan will talk a little bit more about that. Then also the participation in decision-making, which is the second step. And the last one is that citizens themselves can set agendas and have equal rights in decision-taking. Well, the first presentation will be from Thomas. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, when we start that thing? Well, here we go. And it was worth waiting, I guess. I know this talk is supposed to be in English, but assuming basic German knowledge, you probably know the first word. I can tell you for those who don't know, the second big one means elections. And while I've taken this picture a couple of weeks ago in Leipzig, not far from here, it could have really been taken anywhere. because trust in democracy is diminishing throughout the world. And if you think about it, it's not really surprising, is it? The concept of democracy dates back to Greek philosophers and is therefore really centuries old. And while Greece has since come up with new kind of philosophers, the concept has remained quite unchanged. It's based on representation. A whole people elect a few representatives that are then sent off to parliament to decide on very diverse issues. And these decisions and this parliament can sometimes seem a bit removed and maybe a step further away. And the question is, do we really need that when we have the internet? Do we still need a system of representation when we have a fairly widespread, sort of stable network that allows people to take decisions that matter most for them, instead of having to elect a party which always sells a political package which might not entirely suit my needs? So my colleagues and I at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, we did some research and we looked at a couple of e-participation platforms throughout the world, and I want to just show you briefly a few examples. Our research was focusing on a couple of criteria, including usability, commitment, privacy, and transparency. So let me start with usability and a platform called Democracy OS. Democracy OS is an open source project from Argentina where you can propose ideas, discuss them, and vote on them. Now, what's interesting about it, besides its very slick looks, is how it came to be. Because it started out as a political party in Buenos Aires, and they sought to win a seat in the Congress there. And the representative would have committed him or herself to vote in that parliament only according to what people decided on this online platform. This idea of sort of undercutting democracy isn't entirely new. From 2002 to 2014, the Swedish municipality of Vallentuna, it's apparently close to Stockholm, they had a representative in their city council who did exactly that. Only vote according to what people decided on upfront on an online platform. Now, Democracy OS wasn't as successful. They didn't win a seat in parliament. However, they went on to develop the platform further, and they made it open for everyone, so now that everyone can implement its own little democracy like this New York City Council member did. However, while everything looks very nicely, if you look closer, at least this representative doesn't take commitment all too seriously. And that is something that Friesland does much better. For those who don't know, Friesland is a district in the northwestern part of Germany, and although you can't tell from this picture, they have some 90,000 inhabitants besides the cows. And they also have a platform called Liquid Friesland, where you also can propose, discuss, and vote on ideas. And the great thing here is that once citizens agree on an initiative, the city council is legally bound to take it up on their next meeting, which is quite a big commitment by that city council. But you can easily imagine that this is a great driver of motivation and participation. What they don't do so well, maybe besides the not too pretty design, is handling privacy and including every stakeholder. Because only residents of Friesland can go to their local community center and register there for the platform. And once they do, they have to discuss and even vote openly using their real names. And this makes the protection of privacy quite difficult, actually. I mean, I can understand that from a standpoint of the organizer because they want to have proof of identity and maybe avoid misuse, but privacy still is a big issue on that platform. And it is something that Adhocracy, actually a Berlin-based open source project, does much better. You can see here an example from an implementation in Ghana, where they work together with the Youth Bridge Foundation to enable youth participation. And full disclosure here, the KIT also worked together with Liquid Democracy, the non-profit behind Adhocracy, to facilitate a debate on the university's mission statement. I wasn't at the university at that time, but what they did really greatly was that they allowed students and faculty to register using their Shibboleth account, making it very safe. And they were also very transparent on the platform. They stated each and every user's and administrator's role, and they were very easy to understand terms and conditions. And while this all sounds very trivial, we found in our research that many platforms neglect a sound privacy and transparency policy. Now, we always push for more participation. We're all here on the stage to push for more e-participation, but sometimes we tend to overlook the shortcomings that come with the internet. For instance, it's mostly these kind of guys participating in online platforms. White, well-educated, fairly rich male persons. And I'm not really an exception for that. Now, it is not very surprising that topics like data protection and net neutrality dominate discussions on online platforms. And I don't want to say these topics are irrelevant. I just want to point out that when you want to have a holistic process, a holistic democratic process, you need to engage each and every part of society, also the parts that are sometimes neglected. And even engaging these kind of guys you saw earlier on is quite difficult because research shows in the long run, activity rates drop on online platforms. So you need a proven mechanism to engage people over a longer period of time. And one way might actually be money. Of course, you don't want to pay people for their participation, at least in processes that are concerned with common citizenship. But at KIT, my colleagues and I are researching ideas around citizen budgeting and crowdfunding, much like the platform IOB does in the US already. But we're thinking it a bit differently. Imagine a city government giving out $5 or $10 to each of their constituents, and they can then propose ideas that have a threshold, and the other citizens can also invest in these projects on the online platform, thereby deciding which projects get realized and what not. This would accommodate to the different types of people we have. Those that are short on time can only invest in the projects, then move on. And those that want to get more engaged can get onto the platform and discuss the ideas even further. And this will also speak to neighborhood politics. I mean, think Fix My Street, where people can tap spots that need fixing. You can do the same with a crowdfunding platform. And to come to a conclusion, since we're on a stage that is concerned with economic development and cooperation, crowdfunding already works with a very small budget. And we know that the internet in the developing world is sometimes spreading faster than road constructions. So why not have a government there start with a very small budget, trying to reach those that are further away from the capital with a crowdfunding platform, or maybe even have an aid organization set out with a crowdfunding platform, try and ask the targeted communities upfront before projects get realized what they want to invest in. And now this is all dream of the future. We're starting experiments at KIT at the moment and very soon, and I hope to be able to present some results of that research maybe next year on Next Republica. Meanwhile, there are ways of getting engaged in your society, and one prime example is sitting right here. So let's get into the discussion.
Yeah, well, thank you, Thomas, for this really very interesting insights. We had best practices from Argentina, from Friesland, which is my home region, and from Sweden, I think, and Great Britain. Still, I'm wondering if we maybe draw the attention a bit to the developing world. I have checked figures from the ITU, and they are actually saying that more than 2/3 of people in developing countries will still remain unconnected by the end of 2014. In addition, more than 90% of these people in the 49 least developed countries are without broadband access. I think that's it, we could go now. I think when we're talking about developing countries, one of the first prerequisites is actually the internet access. Then I would say the access to free information. And that actually leads me to Stefan, head of Ask the State. And I would like you to maybe explain a bit to us how this platform works and what we would have to have in mind when also implementing such projects in the developing countries.
Yeah, thank you. So, Frag den Staat, Ask the State It's a website we launched in Germany in 2011. We, in this case, is the Open Knowledge Foundation Germany, and it is a freedom of information portal. First question, what is freedom of information? Freedom of information has many meanings, but in the meaning I'm talking, the meaning I specifically mean at this point is a law, the Freedom of Information Law, also known as Freedom of Information Act in other countries. And in Germany we have many of those. Don't only have one on the federal level, we have 11 more on the state levels, and we have also different ones for environment issues or customer protection issues. And so it's very difficult for a citizen who just wants information to get it, because there are many laws that could apply or could not apply, and and also finding the right public authority that has the information might be difficult. So My Society, an NGO from the UK, started a website called What Do They Know? Yeah, there in the back there, I see you, Jen. Yeah, hi. And that's a great idea. The idea is the following. Citizens can go to a website and search for a public authority and then write their freedom of information request right there. They just, like writing an email to someone, and the trick of the site is that the request is shown publicly. Everybody can have a look. This request is ongoing. Has the public authority, has it answered the request? Has it answered on time? Has it answered truthfully? Has it answered with all the information that was requested? And that brings transparency to the whole thing of freedom of information. It makes it more usable and it makes it more transparent. I would also argue that it makes it more efficient, because public authorities don't have to answer the same question twice, since it's already on the website. And there are a couple of other points. For example, also attention. Many people, they get information not only for themselves, but to further their own goals, to strengthen an initiative they have. And having this online, having a website, a URL that you can share on Twitter, on Facebook, with others to rally for your cause, it's very important. You can bring more people behind a request and also up the pressure on public authorities to actually answer. The difference is really that you have the right to know. It's not an e-participation mostly means the government gives you an opportunity to make your voice heard, or so you can say your opinion. But if you have a law that allows you to get information, that you basically have a legal opportunity to get to something, and you are not granted something by the whim of the government, but you actually, that there is a legal basis for your request. And so here in Germany, it's still shaky, I might say. So freedom of information experts, they rank Germany just looking at the laws themselves, not at the practice, but at the laws themselves. They rank Germany quite low in Europe. We don't have freedom of information, for example, in our constitution. That makes many things very difficult. For example, Claude, who should have been here, no offense, Daniela, you are great. He's from Rwanda, and Rwanda has freedom of information in their constitution. And that changes a lot of things, especially if you have to go to court to actually get your information. If it gets higher up, in the end it becomes weighing different legal rights. And if you have a constitutional right to get access to information from a public body, you're in a much stronger position. And we in Germany right now, we don't have that. So some African countries are actually a bit further in some way. So they have a good legal basis. What it lacks is probably the practice. And a freedom of information portal can actually help there. And because it makes requests transparent, it encourages others to make similar requests and also follow their desire to get to their information.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the input. Well, to my experience, actually, we do have laws in many partner countries that grant freedom of information, but even we're talking about a tsunami of laws, but the lack is actually in the implementation. So I think that would also be something that we should concentrate on. What I found very interesting, actually, is that you just said that making the request publicly is a very important precondition for the whole e-participation process. Also to say that making it public also creates some sort of stage, and that e-participation could actually be used as a tool for a multiplicator tool, so to organize a critical crowd. You were just mentioning Claude, and I'd just like to quickly talk about Claude's project in Rwanda, because he's having a platform which is actually quite similar to your platform, Ask the State, and it's called, just a sec, does anybody know it from the public? Yes, that's it. Who is that?
So my society, of course, knows, and they basically build the software Usability behind it, and they probably help them implement it in their country.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I went to his website this morning, I mean, it was just recently launched, but when I look at Ask the State's website, which is actually super popular and successful, I think you had, you were also awarded for Grimme Online Award, and so it's 5,288 requests until today. And when we look at, here it comes the name, Zobanukirwa site in Rwanda, we have 29 requests. And I'd like to have your opinion. What do you think are the main challenges, especially when it comes to developing countries, to get free access for information?
So I'm really not an expert on this topic. So the difference in the numbers is probably just we launched in 2011. They just recently launched. But I can also see that I could imagine that in countries where authorities are maybe more corrupt and a bit more difficult to handle, it is more difficult for citizens to get themselves to make requests, to actually believe that the answer. So for example, I heard, yeah, okay, I make a request, I get an answer, but I don't believe the answer. You know, I think the state will just lie to me. And I heard that from people in other countries, and I said, oh, wow, that is like a completely different basis. For example, in Germany, if I get a reply from the government here, I think, of course, that's correct. It's probably too correct because I probably phrased my question in a way that they could just answer around what I really wanted to know. But they're answered truthfully, so it's also probably a trust thing. Then I would definitely recommend that you allow in the law and also in the platform to have to be an anonymous requester or use a pseudonym to actually make your requests. That probably helps, so your name is not up there on the website where, I don't know, the local police might be after you afterwards. And we have also a feature on Frag den Staat where we say your request is private for now and you can make the whole communication public later. That might also help and encourage people to try it out before, being in the spotlight of the public.
Yeah, thank you. Daniela, we were talking yesterday and you said something very interesting. You said maybe even cases when there is a lot of data online or there is a lot of information online, sometimes it's online in a way that it's not comprehensive at all. Maybe you could go a bit and explain that. Okay.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity of stepping in very last minute. I think I'll have the chance to share some of my observations first as an access to information activist coming from Brazil and Latin America, and now as a funder, as a supporter of many organizations that are working in this field. And yeah, that's definitely true, and I think that I've been many years working in the business of trying to make governments understand that they need to release accurate information that is granular, that is primary, so you can set up a field of intermediaries to work over it, apply different values to it, and be able to show it to the people. And I think the activists and organizations that are working on this have now reached their 8 or 10 years trying to do this, and we have like a much more clear idea of what the challenges are. It's actually really hard, I think, first for the information providers to understand their role, and also for the intermediaries to understand how government works. How can you translate data if you don't know how the structure that created that data works? And there's a lot of information that is missing on the political process that could be really, really helpful for people to be able to create more transparency and accountability in the civil society end.
What are, to your mind, the main advantages of an effective e-participation?
I think I can start by saying that from my experience, like working in this in Brazil and Latin America, this is like a region where there is great excitement for e-participation. We have like this young democracies idea. So Brazil, where I'm from, we are now living our longest democratic period in history, and that's like 25 years. So can you imagine this is like the chance of designing democracy in a period where we already have the opportunities, and also comes with a lot of problems, because in one hand, it seems like institutions are much more flexible and you have a chance to just embed participation into every little thing that you are doing for the public good, and that's one side of it. But there is also a problem of trust in institutions overall, a problem of how much people trust that this can be good for their lives, and also how much they are willing to participate. I think e-participation is great if you think of how it can open the dialogue, and it can create this lively community of people that are talking about a problem from their point of view that sometimes tend to be so distant from the point of view of those who are implementing public policies. And I think we have been really successful in doing this. What I don't think we have been as successful in doing is how we turn this conversation that is now broad and active into something that interacts with political processes that are not designed to be participatory at all.
Yeah.
Even in places like the country where I come from, that has this young democracy history, I think every one of us who is a fan of any politics TV series know that decision-making happens behind doors. There's a lot of, there is a stigma, but there is also some flair on the whole thing of like the way power organizes, and it seems to be sometimes really obscure and difficult to interact with. So I think now it's time that we can build a bridge between participation and the political system as it is.
Thank you. That means that what we would need to do is actually to get the legal basis so that governmental institutions are also obliged to give free access to information. That would mean that there has to be trust that those informations are actually real, and that it's no deals behind closed doors. Also, people need to be illiterate. And what you just said is that it can be a nice opener for a dialogue, and thus also strengthening democratic structures. When we were talking yesterday, you were saying that also the problem sometimes is that even if we have the chance to make the choice or to raise our voice, and even if it is heard, that the things from which we can decide are so not relevant for our lives. That means if the thing I can decide on has no impact on my life, is not making my life any better, the gain, as you just said, quoting the example with the money, how do we actually get the people also to use these tools even if they are there? Maybe you can also...
Well, I mean, if you think about it really...
Would you like mine?
I'll keep on talking. No, that's right. If you think about it really, from a very liberal perspective, then the money is coming from the citizens anyway. So why not share it with them, right? Why not give them the opportunity to spend the money where they think it's needed, rather than giving it to some bureaucrats who think this might be needed there or there. And the other thing is that politics is very used to handling problems themselves, and that's it, and it's a good thing because we have a system of representation, as I stated earlier on. But maybe it's time for a new generation of political decision makers, and maybe it's time for everyone to get engaged and have a chance to really shape politics, which really speaks to your point of having a commitment behind it. We talked about that early on before the session. The federal government of Germany, not even talking about developing countries, the federal government of Germany started this big, huge discussion that they want to have in a dialogue form with every citizen, and you can go onto the online platform and tell them what you think needs to be fixed. What they don't tell you is what they'll do with that information, what they do with it afterwards, and they haven't committed a tiny bit to it. I mean, Ms. Merkel and I think Mr. Gabriel went there and said hello to the audience, then went off, which is a thing that is all too familiar sometimes. And so you really just have to nail it down and share some power, I think.
So that would mean that in processes where people could actually articulate their wish and their request, that there would be, there needs to be a feedback loop, so that they actually know what is actually happening with what I want, with what I engage with. I think also if e-participation as a tool is not actually set the right way, it could also be a boomerang, saying that, well, here we are, you can participate, not knowing actually what happens with this kind of information. People would just say, okay, well, that's it. You know, I'm not trying to engage into these processes anymore. Well, Daniela, do you know anything? Is there actually also some link between e-participation and fighting corruption?
Yeah, I believe so. I think corruption it has a lot to do with trust, right? Like in corrupted political systems, of course, the level of trust in civil society is much lower for a reason. And I believe engaged citizens have much more conditions to oversee public activities and also to engage in any sort of solution that might be created. I also think that the problem with the way people understand corruption is that sometimes it's way too related to a person problem and not a systemic problem. I definitely see that happening where I come from and some Latin American countries too. And the political system is really complex. And if we get more people participating on it, I think they have like a better chance understanding how it happens, and then you can see that what sometimes seems to be like 101 corruption is just inefficiency, or is just the overall difficulty to moving this really heavy machine. And one thing that I think it's a great result of this community in the last few years, like people that have been implementing e-participation tools, especially on the civil society side, is this field of specialists. There are people that have great technical skills, but also became specialists in politics. They became specialists in political system. I think Stefan can definitely say like how much you learn about access to information when you actually implement an access to information platform. You get to know all the little bits of how the system works, and this field of specialists, many of them are now really active in the political field as well. And I think this is part of this new generation that you're talking about, that I think are not only on the side of the representatives, but also these intermediaries in like civil society, people that can talk to organizations and movements, also have the technical skills and understand how the system works. And I think they can be really key to move this forward, to actually get the achievements that we want from these activities.
Thank you. That means that e-participation as such, thus creating more transparency, would also lead to limiting corruption, would also actually help to make democratic systems more legitimized by the people, because then they can actually participate in all the decision making. Stefan, actually, when we look at Frag den Staat, this would be, when we look at the model that I just introduced in the beginning, this would be still, let's say, at the bottom, because when we talk about internet access, then actually providing a tool, an intermediary, to help the users formulate their requests, then urge the public institutions to actually answer the request. But still, if I have the information, what happens next?
So I think information is like a basis for real e-participation. For example, when we had a referendum here in Berlin about the Tempelhofer Feld, the abandoned airport here, the people were in power, right? They could really change something by voting to either like put buildings on our Tempelhofer Feld or not. But in order to actually understand what's happening behind the scenes, we had some requests on Frag den Staat. For example, how much does the Senate or this specific institution spend on advertisement for their campaign, right? And that, you know, shows you how committed they are to certain aspects. You know, gives you background information on what you're actually voting on. And I think so. E-participation can be a good thing if it's like bound to like a legal promise. Like, for example, Liquid Friesland, that there's like a legal binding that the decision goes into some process. We have a similar thing, but very weak thing with our federal parliament, where we have also like a petition site, but then if the petition is accepted, it will only go into some committee and then likely die there, which is also kind of sad. There's like most sad e-participation ever. And so I think like bad e-participation is actually should be considered harmful, simply because if I participate in something, I spend my time, I spend some energy, I write things down, I really want something to change, and then in the end nothing happens, or the opposite happens, I'm just less trustful, I won't do it again, and I'll probably, I don't know, you know, it's like I probably try something completely different. Yes, so it can just go the complete other way. So if you're actually doing e-participation, like put it into, like write down what you're gonna do with the outcome. And try actually to put it in some kind of law. That's the best thing. For example, in Germany, we're still missing a federal referendum, you know, and that would be like a really good thing. That should happen. Mehr Demokratie in Germany fights for it, and that would actually put, you know, that would make e-participation, you know, more real.
Thank you. Again, when we look at the examples that you just presented, coming back to Liquid Friesland. You all remember that picture with that ID card? That really scared me, because I think that privacy is probably one of also prerequisites for functioning e-participation. When we look at Brazil, dictatorship was overthrown in 1988. And still also, when we look at developing countries, a lot of our friends in autocratic states, for example, they're very hesitant to use such tools, even if they are there, because they're just simply afraid of being persecuted. So I think that privacy issues, to really actually motivate the people to engage, is also one of the keys for e-participation.
Absolutely, but there are technologies that can help you with that. Cryptography is very much advanced at this point in time, and you can use it perfectly to have to secure these kind of discussions and have that in autocratic states as well. And the same goes for simple methods as pseudonyms and anonymous forms of discussions as well. And you shouldn't be, as an organizer, afraid really of having this discussion with pseudonyms, because you can simply prevent people from posting like hate and spam messages.
But that's actually also a very interesting point, because looking at my limited experience with e-participation in the Balkans, that was actually a big issue for us, because like having a moderator, that was like some sort of e-map that we wanted to install, and people could actually vote on how the municipal budget should be spent. And we were talking about having a moderator, also because we didn't want to have any hate speech and didn't want to have any hostile comments. But that is actually also some sort of pre-censorship. And so I think that's also a little bit the issue of having this equilibrium between privacy on the one hand, then not trying to pre-censor comments. And that's also something that one has to have in mind. Let me just quickly see. I think we still have some time left. Stefan, when I was looking in the internet, I found a very nice speech of yours. And you had this, I thought, brilliant claim. And that is, let me just remember it. Crypto is defense, whereas free information is attack. Could you quickly just tell us what that means?
So this claim came about at the Chaos Communication Congress, so a big hacker congress, where like loads of people know about crypto, so cryptography, how to secure their emails, how to send encrypted messages to other people, but many of them don't know how to ask for information from the government. And while the cryptography really helps you to stay private, especially in the day and age of the NSA and the BND, it is still vital to actually also not only defend yourself, but to also go out and try to change something. And my proposal, as I'm a bit biased by this platform, is to make FOI requests, so to make your government more transparent. And so this is basically the basis of crypto is your defense, and you should definitely also consider that. But if you're doing anything, you should also go on the offense, which is always important, because offense is the best defense, as the claim goes. And one possible offense can be a freedom of information request. So go to Frag den Staat today and ask your government something. For example, the BMZ, right? They definitely deserve some more requests. They don't have that many on Frag den Staat yet. You can thank your colleagues later.
Well, thank you, Stefan, for this very interesting thought. I'd like to maybe also hear a little bit more from grassroots level. What are like the biggest challenges also in implementing or trying to engage people to actually use, well, to get active, to raise their voice and use ICT tools actually to formulate this dialogue with political decision makers?
I think first of all, the learning curve for many of these important topics that want to connect with these platforms is huge. So when you're talking about budget as an example, and like countries that have participatory budget initiatives, just like understanding public budget is just really hard. Like I spent a long time of my life trying, and it's just like, it's something, it is sometimes completely out of any sort of comparison for whoever is on the grassroots level, as an example. So in order to be able to engage people, sometimes we have to translate so much that information that it gets to, that is meaningful for someone that is just like for a citizen that just wants to participate. And then we end up losing the capacity of participating in the broader decision making about budget. So I think I told you this when we were talking yesterday, that Brazil has like a great tradition of participatory budget, but now what people can actually decide on, comparing all the policies that exist in the country, is less than 6% than the budget. So you have like this great learning curve to be able to understand what is going on. When you can pass that, that's what you get to decide. So this doesn't help engagement at all. And I agree with Stefan that the lack of a feedback loop, the fact that many times there is not the commitment that you're talking about for that to be used also doesn't really help. You can create like a large movement of people that want to use these tools, and in the end, when you finally get them to trust you and to use it, at the end sometimes you don't close the loop. You don't know what this is going to be used for. And right now I think this is the part that we cannot solve yet. I think all, like, there is of course like communications, being able to explain really complex issues to a broader audience. This is all really hard. And there are civil society organizations and movements working on this, and they're doing like a great job. What is still really difficult is to be able to guarantee that this information is going to be used. And I think this commitment that we keep talking about here, it cannot be verbal, is what you said. It has to be in the law. It has to be part of the design of the institutions as they're being created. Because this is all being created. The political system is not like a natural thing. It didn't come from anywhere. So if now we have tools that can create more participation in these institutions, the institutions should react to that and not keep as closed as they are right now. And I think this bridge, it's still really difficult for us to tackle, and we definitely need policymakers committing to this.
We hear all the time, well, it has to be, the political institutions that have to react upon that really have to actually have the feedback loop, who also, there has to be an outcome of this. But also when we draw maybe the attention a bit, because also we know that there are a lot of actually liquid democracy projects or e-participation projects where the users were simply not on. So it's also, I guess, the duty of the citizen actually to get engaged. What are reasons why those kind of projects die?
It's very manifold. It's hard to say really, but I think, as I mentioned earlier on, you need a motivation to get onto these platforms, and if they're not designed very well, both in terms of looks as well as in terms of processes, it's not worth for citizens to engage. And then, of course, you need, as you said, literacy. So we need, at maybe already at school level, processes and classes to tell students what their opportunities would be. And it shouldn't end at saying you can go to the ballot and elect a party, but you should really engage.
Thank you. I just got a sign that we are nearly done. Let's just quickly seize the day, use this opportunity, and I'd like to make a little, just a short round, a pinch, maybe 3 recommendations each to political decision makers, also for German Development Cooperation. What needs to be done in order to foster e-participation projects?
Maybe one for you and your colleagues: share your power, share your money for new kind of engaging technologies. And a statement or a recommendation for the audience: don't let yourself be fooled. Go out and really don't fight the power, but ask them to share it with you.
Stefan?
Yeah, so I always like it when like a German institution or like a European institution goes to Africa and thinks they can make transparency perfect there, while at home they still have loads of homework to do, right? Because we have like many problems here. For example, when this Mr. from the BMZ just talked, he had some points. And one point, for example, was don't outsource to private companies, right? The BMZ is like the prime example of that. They have the GIZ, which is the private company where all the work is outsourced, and then it's actually more difficult to get information from the GIZ, just because they're a private company. So also, don't only preach to others, what should be, but also clean up at home a bit. But definitely, e-participation can only work if there is a basis for it, and the basis must be in the law.
That means that also we would have to have in mind not only to engage transparency and participatory process when it comes to actually formulating development policy, but also when it comes to implementation organizations to share their experiences. Okay, Daniela?
I think do what you preach is a very good advice, and I think that happens like to the external world and to citizens, but also internally. I think the design of these projects tend to be really close, strict to certain departments, and you just need more than that. I think when designing participatory processes and not necessarily participatory tools, think less about the overall participation part of it and like the flashy tool that you need to build, but definitely take time thinking of accountability mechanisms and how we're going to make the commitment, how we're going to close the feedback loop. I think we have to think this as a process and design the entire thing. So from the part where a citizen is going to send you input to the time that is actually that you can do something with it, you can show results on it, and also make it a part of your governance or of your overall decision-making process or public policies. And I think it's like moving from participation to governance. I think it's about time. Like participation is something that you invite people to come over and then you pay attention to them or not. I think it's just like how we are going to use the ability that we have now to engage people and get people to participate, to design public institutions in a different way. And this is, I think, it's just like moving from this participation conversation to a governance conversation. It's really about time that we do that.
Thank you very, very much. Actually, I'd like to, my plan was to summarize it all, but I think that's actually a great point, and we just got so much information, also a lot of homework to do for us. I think that was also very clear, a clear point from the panelists. I'd like to end with a quote by you, Daniela. Politics doesn't belong to politicians, but it belongs to the people. Thank you very much.